my beautiful people. Welcome to the invite-only experience with your Bald Daddies. I am Bald Daddy TekNoNo.
This is RN ISMO.
It has been quite some time since we have chatted with you guys. Last session, we had a nice little track feedback. We featured a lot of tracks from a lot of different artists, the Saunderson brothers, Versace James, Disc Jockey George, Finn, a couple other homies, and it went really, really well. We actually didn't get through all the tracks, so you can definitely look forward to another track feedback session. But we've had a lot of life-changing events, a lot of big updates and stuff that we're going to share with you today. First and foremost, the Miami Music Week recap. I know it's been quite some time since then, but a lot of cool things that we experienced when we went out to Miami. It was the first time that the Bald Daddies got out to Miami together, and what an experience that was with the weather and just everything that we kind of navigated.
Well, the weather wasn't that great.
No,
To
yeah,
start us off,
exactly.
right? The way you can say the weather because we're from Michigan,
Right.
and you would think it would be amazing weather, but no, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was storming the entire time we were there. Only one day though, it wasn't storming.
Yeah.
But I think the first day of Ultra got canceled, right?
Was it the first or the second?
One of the days got canceled, but then we were going to Solid Grooves, and this was one of our important parties because I always wanted you to be there to experience that. Because we talked about the importance of letting the track tell the story and narrate the story. And it's one thing me telling you that, but it's another thing you experiencing that at that level of space, Miami.
Yeah.
But we're also from Michigan, and we also want to experience a bit of that warm weather. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I think up until end of March, we didn't really have that good, like 50-degree weather.
Yeah, and it was
We're in shorts right now because it's 80 degrees out today in Detroit, so it's
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 hot as a
finally.
nutsack, nice and moist, and that pure Michigan summer weather is upon us now. And it's just kind of funny because I felt like the day that we left for Miami, it was like 50 degrees, super nice. And then we get to Miami and it's drizzling a little bit. It's kind of chilly. And we're gearing up for our first party, which is the Solid Grooves party. And we got a couple of things that we wanted to do beforehand. We got to meet with our publicist, Mr. Chad Downs from Ahead Artist Solutions, which such a good conversation. It's always something to chat with these guys, over emails and over the phone and over Zoom and stuff like that. But I feel like, we just connect so much deeper in person with some of these people because then it all makes sense. All the communication that we have with these guys or these girls, working on projects or working on releases or working on ideas. And then when you finally like get in person with these people and they realize like this Bald Daddy energy thing is like, it's a thing. Like it's not,
Mhm.
it's you don't really understand it until you're in it, and it's just like a level of intensity that we have, and there's not really any, you know, you got to feel it to experience it. But it was nice to see him, and like in the midst of all the chaos and stuff, we wanted to hit up the Hood Politics party, and 45 minutes into a 2.5 mile Uber ride, the driver is beeping aggressively at everything known to mankind. We can't see out of the Uber. And then we had to make the call that we weren't going to go to that party. We were just going to go straight to space.
Yep, straight to space, and the roads were flooding too, so
Oh yeah, we could have kayaked probably faster from where
the
we
Uber
were.
boats wasn't available at the
Yeah,
time.
Uber boats weren't available at the time, but finally got to Solid Grooves party at, I think it was like 11:30. Doors opened at 11, and that was right at the time that we heard that the festival got canceled, that Factory Town had been shut down, which if you put it into perspective, Ultra, I want to make an estimate because I have no idea what the capacity is for the full festival of Ultra, but at the time, the entire main stage was completely flooded.
Yep.
So what happens when you cancel a festival of that magnitude? It sends thousands and thousands of people into the streets of Miami. Well, the streets of Miami were also flooded. So one of like the only clubs that was open was, I believe, Floyd, which is next to Space,
Yep.
and Space Miami. And then from what I hear, the only other party that was popping was the Hood Politics party. So we ended up getting at Solid Grooves, and we got to experience like the full capacity of Solid Grooves from like start to almost finish. And wow,
I
like
mean, we didn't stay till finish because the finish was 8 p.m., but we ended up leaving around, what, 1 o'clock, 12:30 p.m. from 11:30
1:37 p.m. to be exact. Yeah.
to 12:30.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's a special experience. I mean, you can talk about it a little bit more considering you've never experienced that. You never
Yeah.
experienced that
I think
solid groove
I mean,
for
honestly,
hours on end.
the thing about solid grooves is it's such a mature sound. It's a mature sound in the elements they use, but I think for me the thing that stuck out the most was just the patience in the mixing. As somebody that comes from like a top 40 background that's constantly switching songs, a minute, minute and a half in, to hear these guys playing 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of an entire track and doing so in such an elegant way, it was super inspiring. And like I can't say that I heard any songs that I've heard before. And we saw a lot of different talent, right? Like we saw
Apollonia, right?
Apollonia blew
Yeah,
my
I told
freaking
you. I
mind.
told you.
And so give them a little breakdown of like who Apollonia is, because I didn't know who it was going into it.
Wow. Yeah, and Apollonia's been, I feel like they've been doing it forever. I'm not like an expert with Apollonia. I mean, you can look them up, but of
Yeah.
course, I know Shonky. And
Yeah.
I was like, Shonky's the guy. So, um, I mean, how would you describe it? I mean, I told you we had this discussion. I still think they are minimal, but definitely they have that old school vibe behind them. Like
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
old
from what I
school
could tell,
tracks.
it's like you had one guy that was mixing like almost on like a modular setup, and then another guy that was mixing vinyl, and then you had one that was mixing on CDJs. And I was like, this is insane. Because normally when you have, at least from my experience leading up until this point, right? When you have three people of three different styles, it's so difficult to meld them in a way that makes sense. But the way that they did it, you could tell who is mixing in, but it was so proper and so respectful that it was almost like one solid mix for like 3 hours, and each of them was mixing in a completely different style, and it was just the coolest thing to watch. And the cool part about this entire experience is, like, normally when you think of space, like, in my past experiences, I had never been to space in the GA fashion. So I'd never just bought a
So you're
ticket.
telling us you're bougie,
I
Noah?
was very bougie. I'd never walked out of Miami space and spent less than 3 grand in totality. And I've never gone to Miami spending under 5, which that's not a flex. That is me openly and transparently admitting that I am ignorant or was ignorant and thought or prioritized things differently. But like going in there and having the experience that we had in pretty much a sober mind, I think I had 2 beers, you had 3 beers. We had some Red Bulls and stuff like that to keep going, but, like, ultimately, we were fully connected to the music, and I'll tell you, it just brought, like, a different level of analysis to, like, what I was listening to, because before it was always about, like, who's there, who are we gonna talk to, blah, 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 but, like, for me, it was more so just about the music, and, like, we had moments where we were together and we were vibing, but then we broke off, and in the time of breaking off, I had just been adopted by the space security team because I could see, with my security background working for Target, um, you know, I'm always like a protector at heart first. It's always something that I come by honestly for first. Like I'm always looking out for my people or just the general mass. And like it was just a complete and utter clusterfuck. So I ended up like befriending these people that had just been walked to their booth. And I'm like, hey, do you mind if I stand here? And they're like, nah, man, just keep these people out of the booth. I was like, all right, perfect. So an hour passes and I'm standing there and the security guard keeps looking at me and he eventually looks at me and he's like, hey man, you're going to have to move. And I looked at him and I'm like, hey man, I'm not going to move because you're struggling right now. I'm going to stand right here and I'm going to help you out. You good with that? And he was like, yep. So for the next 2 hours, I had just played security to a degree where like some of these people that were there were like, yo, you even work here? Now, mind you, I had a KMS record shirt on, so, like, obviously, I don't work for space, but, like, I am a lot larger than most of the people that were there, and I was obviously had my wits about me, and, like, this group of lovely Colombians decided that they wanted to try and, like, talk some smack, and, "You don't even work here, who are you telling me to move, blah, blah, blah," it was just such a unique experience because then after that whole operation,
Well, I'm just trying to enjoy the music.
you're on the other
I'm,
side.
this is, yeah, this is like, we talk about, I feel like, you know,
We're always focused on different things.
yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to get lost in the groove as much as I can, like, so I don't really care about what's going on around me, like, I'm just genuinely, like, especially when Pasta plays,
Yeah.
I don't wanna I don't wanna think about anything but listen to this man and listen to his IDs and just think
Mhm.
about what the hell he does to his records
Mhm.
that I can do in my records. So certainly, that was a different experience for me at the time just because I wasn't, I was more present in what was going on in the music. But mind you, also, space is packed shoulder to shoulder, front to back.
Yeah,
There's
and I
really
was talking
no,
to them and they said that, like, they had
really
to
no
cut the door off
much
at one
movement.
point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even all the way to the back. I mean, I cannot move. I mean, you're pretty much strapped to the back of the bar.
Yeah.
So like, I wanted to get actually closer, but even if you go closer to the stage, it's not really, you're not really in the position of being, moving around or being present with the music, honestly.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
I
just one of
think
those things.
the overall experience, it just brought, like, a different level of respect to a lot of, like, the OGs and, like, the people that we look up to, and it really gave us a lot of good reference points on, how to throw proper events in Detroit and in terms of, like, lineup and just overall cadence of the night, because I think, like, the one thing about space is the way they do their lineups. When you look at some of these lineups, it's just there's so much headliner presence, but it doesn't really matter when they play. It's you're there at space and you're enjoying it, and it doesn't matter because Dennis Cruz went back to back with who did he go? Marco
Marco
Carolla,
Carolla.
and that was to
Yeah.
close it off, and that didn't even start till 7 p.m. But we had been there since 11, and it was like the intensity around the entire night just stayed at, like, a top point for the whole time, and I think, like, it was just really cool to see minimal music just front and center for, what, 11 hours that we were there for the entirety of the time, and to experience it all sober because every time I had been there, it was like, I don't get there until 3 a.m., and at that point, I'm already sauced up and full throttle, but, like, to
Mhm.
be there start to finish sober and then get back to the hotel, I think around, like, 3 and then fall asleep. I mean, we really went into Miami, went to Solid Grooves, experienced 11 and a half hours at Solid Grooves, took a nap, then woke up, got food, went to sleep, and then we had to go home the next day. But I thought it was really cool to tie everything together with a little bit of sunshine. We got to see the tennis open, I believe,
Miami Open
Miami
just
Open.
for like an hour and a half,
So who did we
which
see?
I'm still upset because they didn't refund me, because they fucking canceled session 8, and I'm looking at the camera right now. Ticket masters, motherfuckers, fucking assholes, and they charged me, and then they're acting dumb because it's related to Miami Open, but and then now we're going into this bullshit. Whose fault is it? Is it Miami Open? Is it Ticketmaster?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Ticketmaster's already got some heat up their ass because 'cause they're being sued
Yeah.
right now for
Well.
creating a monopoly around tickets, so that's neither here nor there.
Anyway, so but when we went, yes, hour and a half of tennis, and I mean, who do we see? We saw the Frenchman, Monterino, for a little bit. He's a bald daddy too.
Yeah,
He lost though.
he did.
But the good thing, I was mostly focused on at least getting some sort of tan. I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a burn on my skin
Yeah.
before we
Which I think we
left.
did get a little bit of color because the back of my
I
neck
did,
was definitely red for
I did. It
sure.
was
I had
red
a
when I came
farmer's
back.
tan, but because I don't know how appropriate it would be for us to take our shirts off at a tennis open like
But
that, but
that's what we talked about. I think if we were to go and when we go to grandstand center court during the night session, those get really wild.
I bet.
Those like uh you know during the day, and I forgot what the name. It was just like a general pass because you can see the side courts.
Mhm.
Those are a little bit more like timid and respectful, but the grandstand, though, that's actually it's not a grandstand. I think it's called center court, but it's like the actual stadium court. There it is. The grandstand is still part of like the side.
Mhm.
those stadium quarters where it's like during the nighttime it gets wild and rowdy.
And I think, it was cool for me because, going into it, I had already in my head set a date that I was gonna be leaving Target, right?
Oh,
And
so now
we'll
we're
we'll
segueing
get
to
it yeah, we'll get into that,
Target.
right? But, like, for me, it was, going into this experience, I knew that it was gonna be, like, one of our last vacations, or so I thought. It would be one of our last vacations with each other before I took this leap of faith into music in this new life without Target, and, I remember going into it, and I was just kinda like, "Ish, you're in control," like, and you kinda said, like, "Oh, are you letting go of control?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, you are fully in control," and then, we go to Solid Grooves, and, like, it's pouring rain, and we're driving through a monsoon in an Uber for 45 minutes to go 2.5 miles, and then we get to Solid Grooves, we spend 11.5 hours at Solid Grooves, and then we go home, we sleep for a couple hours, whatever, and then the following day, we get to experience tennis, like, it was, like, one of the first times I fully kinda let go and just kinda let God guide us through there and kinda let you do your thing, and I felt like I finally got to get a glimpse into, like, what fueled you and what made you you, because not only did we get to experience Solid Grooves and get this, like, this perspective of, like, what influenced you as an artist, then I got to see you get hype when we were watching tennis, and I don't think I've ever gotten that side of you, like, I don't think I've ever played tennis with you. I've played tennis with
Oh
Nathan,
no, yeah.
right? But, like, seeing you get hype in that environment, like, it just it made a lot of things click for me, and it was a really cool experience to just kinda kick back and get to enjoy that as we tied up our Miami Music Week experience, which next time we'll be going for a full week. We'll get our background, like, piece time in beforehand, and then we'll start to lock in earlier on and get the full experience, but it was definitely cool to kinda tie everything together for me and then come back, and then as soon as we got back, it was like I was putting in my notice at Target, which then leads us into this completely new chapter of life, right? So for those of you that don't know, for the last 8 years, I've worked at Target. I started entry level, and worked my way up through the ranks, and, up until last Wednesday, which last Wednesday was, let's see, last Wednesday was April 24th. Up until April 24th, Target was really kinda all I ever knew professionally, and, an opportunity presented itself a couple weeks prior to that, with Powerhouse Gym, and I felt like, it was an opportunity for me to fully commit to this music thing, and we got to experience Miami Music Week and get inspired by some of the artists that we look up to. Got a little tennis in the end, and then came back, put my 2 weeks in, and, like, as soon as I put my 2 weeks in, it was like life kinda took a turn for what is to come. Shortly after that, we got booked in Denver, so we could talk a little bit about that,
Was
but
it? Oh, I didn't know it was that recent. Oh, it was a recent booking. Was it? I thought it was there for a while. No,
I mean, we kinda talked about it, but nothing really solidified until, like,
after Miami.
yeah, that's
Oh,
when we
okay.
got the flyer and stuff like that, and, you know, Target had it's always gonna have a special place in my heart because the more that I operate within the business side of music and business acumen, as my store director, Aaron, likes to talk about, it's like, if I did not have the experiences that I had with Target handling business, handling, conversations with law enforcement, being very stern on specific communication and setting expectations, I don't know if I'd be as successful in music, and I think, we got to go to Denver and experience these beautiful fucking people that are in Denver and just this whole different vibe in Denver that I didn't even really expect to walk into. Like, obviously, the homies Aoi and Parmesan, we knew they were getting after it, but to the extent that they were, like, we kinda walked in and opened up a Manjan Lao style restaurant venue, and, like, the doors opened at 10:30, and at 10:35, it was sold out.
Yeah,
And we
I mean
just
that was. We talked about it. Like I was genuinely shocked to know that there's such a strong minimal esque scene in Denver. Just because when you think of Denver, you would think more bass related shows, which you should because I think it's still
Mhm.
predominantly what that market is. But to see something that Aoi and Parmesan built over the years, and to create this aura where the minimal artists from around the world, they want to play there. They want to be a part of this scene. It's really special. And top to bottom, just the locals, the Co-Factor, Trey. Um, we haven't really dove into the scene, but we saw Co-Factor, Trey, IOE, and Parmesan.
Mhm.
Those four are beyond. I mean, I was speechless because it was something that we don't get to see in Detroit. And I made a comment like, I wish we've had this here because I just think, and maybe it's me being away and just being there for a day or two, but those 2 days, I was just, there isn't anyone else that's really spinning minimal or like mature tech house. Everyone's trying to be hype in here. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but like everybody's doing this here to where it's extremely fatiguing to go into a club and again, we talk about proper opening slots, and then those openers are trying to slam us with Beatport Top 100 tracks while I go in Denver and I'm seeing the openers just absolutely destroy the room. It
Playing
just
music that I never really heard either.
just vibes are insane. And I talked to Corbin Nawe about it, and I said it's just incredible, and certainly um,
Which shout out to Aoi. It is his birthday today, so happy birthday,
oh,
you
of
beautiful man.
course. Of course, and he's coming for Deeper Purpose this weekend, so I'm excited to catch up with him as well.
Yeah.
But Denver, yeah, for me, it was just I mean, it was just like I did not expect that level of maturity from everybody,
Yeah, and
from that
you made a
sound as
comment
well.
too about like, a lot of the newer locals, not spinning mature tech house. And I think, let's open that up a little bit and discuss that because I think there's a lot of insight that we can provide. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with tech house. Okay. But I think when you are trying to establish yourself in a scene that is just completely oversaturated with a specific sound. There's nothing wrong with picking that sound as your sound, but you have to focus on what it is that is going to set you aside from everybody else. And if we were talking to one of our friends and we were trying to, I think it was Bree, we were just making a list of like how many artists that we had in the scene, from a local perspective that we could put on shows and different things like that. And I think the list was like 98. And I think I would definitely be generous in saying, but at least 50% of those people are tech house focused. And I think, the biggest question that I get is like, how do I get booked for more shows? Well, number one is like, are you making music, right? Because if you're gonna be pursuing tech house, which is fine, you have to be making music to some capacity because that's really the one thing that right now, from a perspective of the local scene, that's gonna set you aside. Is like, are you making music? And I'm not saying you have to have releases on Repopulate or all these other labels or anything, but you have to be furthering your craft when it comes to the creation process. Because if you are playing a sound that is mass produced right now, then you have to focus on what's going to set you aside, right? Do you have anything to add on that?
I'm just tired of hearing the same shit every time I go into the club.
Yeah,
I'm tired.
yeah,
And I think that if you are in the scene in the beginning stages and you're trying to move up in your career, you got to think about the people that you're trying to impress. And you're trying to impress the industry folks.
yeah.
I mean, am I wrong to say that?
No,
Right? Like you are playing, if you're an opening DJ, guess what? There's not going to be people in the room. But guess who's listening? The bartenders are listening. The Bree is listening.
the
Shout out to
talent
Bree. The
buyers.
talent buyers are
Yep.
listening. The club owners are listening. And they're just like, okay, like just, and it might not be they're sitting there with their arms crossed and they're paying attention to your transitions, but they're aware of the vibe that you try to curate.
Hmm.
And certainly if it's like, it's just a sour taste to really experience something to where, your emotions overtake your responsibilities.
Hmm.
I mean, I had a conversation a few months back with someone, and they were defending an opener, and they said, "Well, this is their first time at Magic Stick," and I didn't say this to her, and I just never had that problem. You
Now,
know, I've never had that
do you think it's
problem.
because you chose a genre that isn't really widespread, at least in our
But remember, I
area?
was I was more in a tech house in the beginning. If you look back to like
Yeah,
Elevate the Sound, right?
but
Those
you
are
were making your own music,
I was making my own music.
right? So
Yeah.
it was like you already were establishing like, okay, yeah, I'm playing tech house, but like I'm playing
But
my tech house.
I could be making music and be an absolute shit wreck of a DJ too.
True.
That's different.
Yeah.
That's also have to be considered.
And I think like the one thing, you know, because a lot of people don't really realize like how many ears are listening to the opening sets. But like you said it, like the bartenders, the talent buyers, like those, they're not, they know they paid top dollar for these headliners and the direct support people to come in. They're not necessarily focused on those people. They're focused on the ones that are going to be next. And a lot of the times that are the openers, the one that's opening the room, and then the one that comes after that, because those are the opportunities that you have to really make a lasting impact. And I'll tell you right now, like shout out to Dropcatch, because he blew a lot of people away with his opening set for Ranger Truco on March 1st, because he came in and he stayed authentic to his sound, but he did it in such a respectful manner where he was like, this is this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and we're gonna dance to it. And I just remember walking in at 9:30, the entire venue is packed as hell, and like he's ripping disco. And he ripped disco for an hour and a half straight. And I don't remember the last time that anyone did that, but he did it in such an elegant fashion that he set us right up, and we took it over, and then we set Ranger up, and he brought it home. And it was a beautiful experience. And then you think about some of the shows that came after that, recapping with Bree and stuff like that. Like there were a lot of good opener sets, but then there was a few like I forgot the
I'm gonna
exact.
text Bree right now, tell him,
Yeah, I forgot the exact
FaceTime.
headliner, but the opener came in and just started ripping techno, which was not the exact sound that was in the mix that this person provided for the venue. And it's like, if you want to get booked again, number one, if you're going to send a venue a mix of stuff that you are going to play and then you show up and play something different that is just overly aggressive, the chances of you getting booked again are probably going to be a little slim, right? And, this person may have been staying authentic to their sound, but at the same time, you're almost like getting booked on false pretense because you're willing to display yourself being a specific artist, and then you get put on a show and then you blow the show out of the water by ripping techno at 9 p.m. And, uh, there, whether, regardless if that's a right way to do things or a wrong way to do things, I think at the end of the day, with every chance that you get to play at a venue like Magic Stick or like Electricity or TV Lounge or Spotlight, all these venues, if you show up and you open up the room proper, I promise you that is going to make more of a lasting impact than you showing up and playing all the music that everybody already likes and wants to hear. And this is what Ish talks about with the Beatport Top 100. It's like we all know that those songs work because they're in the Beatport Top 100 for a reason. Blow us out of the water by playing music we didn't know that we wanted to hear. And to tie it back into Denver, I think that was the coolest part about Denver, because even the show that we saw beforehand when Ali played at 1134, like, dude, I think there was 2 songs that trade play that I actually knew, but all the other ones, it was just
Yeah,
proper
and
minimal rollers.
we
Yeah,
Shazam one.
we Shazammed a
Yeah,
few.
I mean,
And at the end of the day, like,
yeah,
that's the whole premise behind this podcast, right? It's just like, we don't know everything. We know a few things. We've made mistakes. We want to be vulnerable and be open and honest with how we assess different things and things that we've been through, because ultimately, like, we just want to bring as many people along as possible. And, we may have a little bit of bald daddy energy that's attached to some of these things, but, bald daddy energy, nobody asked for it, but it's what everybody needs. Sometimes you need a little bit of tough love to get you where you want to go. You're not going to be held all the time, but I promise you, after I yell at you, I may hold you, okay? But, like, at the end of the day, the thing that we liked the most about Denver was just the maturity in the sound and the cadence of the night.
Oh my God, the people. But wait. Let's tell them the story about the gym. The
Yes.
gym.
Yeah,
What a
so
story.
Mr. Chris and his beautiful wife. So, like, we go into Denver, and I'm sorry that we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. It's been some time since we've been on
Classic
camera.
ADHD,
Yep.
ADD podcast.
Yep.
So
But, you know, we go to Denver, right?
just
And
take
we're
a
like,
gummy and enjoy it.
yeah.
Just take a gummy and enjoy it. I feel like this is one of those, like, we're bouncing back and
And
forth. But I do want to talk about Target because that's important. I want to talk about KMS. I want to talk about the NFL draft, and I want to talk about movement. So let's not forget about that, okay?
perfect. So Denver, Target,
Yeah,
KMS,
because I
NFL draft,
really want to talk
movement.
about that because you're leaving the corporate world into the unknown, and it's a unique challenge and chapter for you. And you know, I really want to dive into a little bit more how you really feel emotionally. But
You
anyway,
want to make me cry, don't you?
I wanted this to be real because it is real, and I feel like you still have not really opened up to me about what that is. Because I've been with you when you moved into the house, when you live with your family the entire time. So I know the anxiety, and I know you do not sleep because you're anxious as fuck.
Bald Daddy energy. Nobody
So
asked for it. Everybody needs it.
so like, you know, Endeavor, this guy sleeps for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And you know, acts like it's like no problem, and I'm just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you
I
mean
mean,
it's
on
no
average,
problem?
I think I average like 3 hours to 4 hours per night. Is it great sleep? No. But to just
It's
dive
not
right
per pure
into
human protocol, you
no,
know.
it's not. To dive right into the Target thing, just being honest and vulnerable. I mean, it's it's um it's very scary, you know, because I have a lot of people in my life right now that are struggling to get jobs. Like a family member of mine got laid off from a very large company um 8 months ago and has struggled to get a job. And you know, I'm hearing stories and people texting me all the time like, "Yo, I got laid off. Do you have anything I could do or this or that?" And, you know, the more that I hear these conversations, the more that it made me feel like I was making the right decision because all of the people I know that are successful always say, like, it's in those moments where you find out who you really are. And I don't know what the future holds for me. All I know is that in order for me to fully immerse myself into music and to do something that I've never done with music, I have to create an environment that I've never been in before. And part of that is taking away the safety net that Target provided. Because to put it into perspective, you know, without getting very technical, like let's just say every month I'm bringing home $5,000 guaranteed in a paycheck, right? That's going away. It's gone. It ended Wednesday of last week. And, you know, I called Target Pay and Benefits today and they're like, you can't access your 401k for 30 days. And I'm like, okay. So like now I'm like feeling the stress of like the monetary stressors that I know a lot of my friends are feeling. And, you know, the one thing that keeps me sane is, and, you know, we kind of briefly touched on this, is the people in my foxhole. You know, like when I think about the unknown, there's one thing that I do know, and it's the people that I surround myself, people like you know, our crew, KMS. And I do know that there's a lot of unknown, but I know that I have the right people around me. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, that's the one thing that's
You
keeping
have
me
the
going.
support system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like when all hell breaks loose, who are the people in your foxhole? People like Ish, people like Nathan, you know, Pat, Mr. Promoter, you know, the KMS boys, Saunderson brothers, King Sadi, you know, I could go on with the crew that we have, but it's like I knew that it was something that I had to do. And, you know, the moment that I made that commitment and put that date on paper, we got another track signed to a label in Amsterdam. We finalized everything for Denver. I got a few other shows offered. We're working on ADE right now. And I knew in that moment, like, it didn't really matter what the unknown variables were because I had the right people around me that believed in me and I'd have my faith in God. And at the end of the day, like, regardless of what's going on in life, God will guide me through and he'll guide me exactly to where I need to go. And, you know, it is, it's very scary because I have no idea what next week is going to hold financially. Like, I now have all this time on my hands, and luckily I have Powerhouse now to fill in the gaps and stuff. But as a lot of people know, like, people are having a hard time finding jobs as it is. Do you think they're gonna have the expendable income to fucking spend $3,600 on 48 sessions at the gym with me? Probably not. But at the end of the day, I know that, like, it was time for me to stop meeting people at their worst and making it worse by having to send middle-aged mothers to jail that were stealing groceries for their children that couldn't eat because they didn't have money and their credit cards were maxed out. And instead of focusing on that shit, it's meeting people at their worst and building them up to be a better version of themselves. And, keeping that in the forefront of my mind that I now get the opportunity to do that just keeps me going each and every day. And having you in my corner and people like you to support me in that vision in any capacity that entails makes it a lot easier for me. So I'll open it up for any questions that you may have so we can continue to be raw and vulnerable
I
here.
mean, no questions. I mean, well, you know, to top, talking about like the support group, right? Looks like we're gonna be together. So the
Yeah,
Bald
we are
Daddies are gonna
moving
be
in
back.
together.
We're gonna move in together. So because we lived before, and then our brother Nathan is gonna move in with his girl. So congratulations to him. Another different chapter for him.
It's just still accepting.
I'm still accepting because I still remember him as a pretty much just an asshole. But he's all grown up now. So that's, I guess, the beautiful part of life.
Mhm.
Just to see him living with someone, just still kind of tough to wrap my head around it. But the Bald Daddies will be back, so I'm excited to. I'm just excited to like is like there's a lot of unknowns, and I would love for you to talk about more about KMS because I don't think a lot of people know how you've started with KMS, and you know, tell me,
I mean,
your relationship with Dantes. I mean,
yeah.
if it wasn't for Dantes, really, it wouldn't be in the same position. And the whole, uh, because KMS sold the rights to Armada, and they became independent, and they had to start everything from scratch. And then had a relationship with Dantes
Mhm.
to where Dantes, essentially said, "Hey, you want to
You
do
wanna be
something
a
here?
part of it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want me to do something here?"
Well, and it ties kinda into
Like, I don't know how specifically it happened though.
to be honest, I don't really know either, but it does tie into my reasoning for leaving Target because, the vision that I have in conjunction with Kevin and Dantes and Damari and stuff for the label was kind of the fueling fire behind the engine getting me out of Target because the vision is so strong for KMS and the possibilities are so endless that um it it made the unknown seem a lot more intriguing than it would without it. If KMS was not if I didn't have KMS in my corner, I don't know if I would be where I'm at with Target.
Hmm.
Um, but it kind of all started, before Movement, Dantes and I were homies, right? Like me, Dantes and Mo, Damari, like those are my boys. I would
This
do
is what year
anything.
is this?
This is it's 2024 now. I think Dantes and we've been friends now because I was friends with Mo first, and then I met
Yep.
Dantes. I can't say
Through
exact.
supply and demand, I would say,
Yeah,
right?
through
Because we
supply and
would
demand.
go and go to their shows with supply and demand. That was Dantes and Mo.
Mhm.
Um, but then, yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about the initial
Yeah, I
friendships
mean,
that
honestly,
started. Because
like
of course, now we're all friends.
mhm,
Damari, Dantes, Mo as well. For me, but I
mhm.
think it all started with you, and then it was the extension
Yeah, and I
with
think,
the relationships in
the
that
relationship
regard.
just kinda built and, I've always looked up to those boys, like, coming into the scene, from TekNoNo to TekNoNo, like, Mo and I always had a very, very strong relationship, his relationship with DJ Godfather, who is a huge part of my beginning journey as DJ Nono, like, I always just had a good relationship with him, and then I later met Dantes and Damari, and we started doing things together, all of us, and it wasn't until Movement of last year that I remember sitting in the crowd with with Lindsay, with Cam, and I think Lou, and it was when Dantes and Kevin were going back to back, and, you know, I don't know what it was that lit a soul like a fire in my soul, but I just, like, looked at that stage and looked at them doing their thing, and I was just like, "I'm gonna play on that stage next year." And, you know, after they got off, they had the after party at Magic Stick, and, you know, we set Lou up to shoot for them, and he ended up shooting for the after party when
That was
Damari.
was it Summit
No, no,
Gangala
no.
one?
No, it was
That was
actually Kevin back to back with Damari and Dantes, because the Summit one wasn't actually until the day after. It was on Monday. And so I just remember, like, being at the Magic
I
Stick
think I was at
party.
Spotlight. I think I was at
You
the
were.
Lobos
Yep,
Zip. Yeah.
yep. And so, like, I remember Dantes hitting me up on Monday, and he was like, "Yo, like, what's your plan?" And I said, "Whatever you need, bro, like, let me know." And, you know, I think we left Movement at, like, 8 PM, and I got him to the after party, and we got all checked in and
You're
everything.
missing important pieces
What piece?
because we hosted a day party
I
on Sunday. Want to go into that?
mean, that
Which
was
is an important piece. You know, you can't leave that out.
well, yeah, I
You want to
mean,
be raw?
yeah, you wanna be real and I completely forgot about that, to be honest, but we hosted a party at Love and Tequila.
Which was a grand opening, right?
It
Or
was
one of
right
those
around then, yeah, it was the
first
first
weeks.
house music event that they had at Love
Shout
and
out to
Tequila.
Chrome for giving us an opportunity.
Yep,
That was
Chrome and
cool.
Godfather for sure, and honestly, I think it was probably that in conjunction with just being available on Monday, because there's a lot of different things that we had to navigate on that Sunday. So, like, we had equipment lined up with a specific individual, and the plan was that the individual would deliver it to Love and Tequila by 10 AM. And I remember waking up at 9:15 to a text message that was delivered at 8:45 AM. "Hey, I got sick and I can't deliver the equipment." So then I went into solution mode, and I started hitting a bunch of people up, like, we could get some equipment, but, like, it wasn't the proper equipment. So then for
Now,
what
mind you also that the Saunderson brothers are on the lineup. I think that's important
Yes,
to say. Yeah.
the Saunderson brothers are on the
For the
lineup,
Love and
so I hit up
Tequila.
Damari and Dantes, and I'm like, "Yo, this is a situation, what do we do?" And so they hit up Kevin, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we gotta rent some equipment, like, what can we do?" So I literally, and this is before even meeting Kevin, and I go and I pick up their V10 and two 3000s. So mind you, I meet Kevin Saunderson for the first time in a pair of short shorts and a wife beater and a fanny pack. And I go to pick up the V10 and 3000s, and his daughter, his poor daughter, answers the door and
It's
immediately
the big
just
white
goes,
dude. Just
"Yeah,
looks like he's lost.
yeah," literally, like, I'm like, "Hey, I'm here to pick up equipment from your dad." And she just opens the door and goes, "Dad." And then Kevin comes out the back room, and he's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" You know? And I pick up the V10 and 3000s, and I'm like, "All right, do you have flight cases?" He's like, "Oh, no, we don't have cases." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I get all the equipment, and then I get to Love and Tequila, and then I realize that there's no Ethernet cable to connect the 3000s. So I called Damari up, and he's like, "Yeah, oh shit, it's at Elephant Room." And I'm like, "Awesome." So I go to Elephant Room, never been there, and he's like, "It's in the back." And I'm like, "Oh, the one that's locked and fenced in and the venue's not open? Yeah, you're just gonna have to climb the fence."
Oh, I didn't know you climbed the
I
fence.
climbed the fence, I grabbed the Ethernet
No.
cables, and I climbed back over the homeless guy, and then the parking lot guy were looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm authorized to be here. Here's the message. Check it out, whatever." And then I just get back in my car and leave. Now, mind you, this is all the event
Wow.
starts at 12 PM. This is at like 11:35. All the equipment is already there. I don't have the Ethernet cables. I somehow, some way, by the grace of God, like,
We
praise
open,
him,
right?
we the sound was on and
Yeah.
plugged in at 11:59, and Juicy was playing at 12:01.
Oh, it was juicy.
Juicy was opening, and I think that, in conjunction with just being a resource for Dantes and just fully clearing the schedule, kind of let him know, like, it indirectly, like, "Okay, this guy means business, he's willing to do what it takes." And 3 days after Movement, mind you, after I made that comment to Lindsay, Lou, and Cam, in the middle of the crowd during Kevin and Dantes that I was gonna play that stage, just, one of those manifestation moments. 3 days later, Dantes hits me up and he's like, "Yo, we're rebooting KMS. Do you wanna be a part of it?" Well, it was really funny to be like, with the beginning of that process because, Dantes is introducing me as the intern. Well, that lasted for, like, 3 days, and then it was the A&R, and then from, like, 2 weeks after that, it was the label manager, and fast forward to now, like, everything that we've really been able to do, a lot of the grunt work, I've had the privilege to be able to do for KMS. And, I've learned so much along the way. Not like there's so many different things that you can break down and really analyze from the perspective of what I've learned. But like, one of the things that I really learned was like all those countless nights where I didn't get a lot of sleep because I was working 10 hours at Target and then staying up, getting home from Target at 10 p.m., staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning and doing stuff for KMS, gathering metadata sheets, sending emails. And mind you, like a lot of the people we communicate from a label perspective, like LabelWorks team, a lot of those people are in Europe. So what does that entail? That entails sometimes 6 to 8 hour time difference. So like I'm emailing these people at a different time and like it just creates this very unique experience. But I think I've learned so much and they knew right away because when you start a label and you become independent, like it's a net negative thing. Like it costs more money to release music more times than not than it does bringing it in. You don't really make a lot of money from music anymore which is crazy because when Kevin got into this shit, you don't really see, like you don't make money from the show aspect more so than you do selling your actual records. Because at the time that he created KMS, he talks about it on the Will Clark podcast. You go and you bring your records around and you sell your records like literally like, "Hey, Ish, do you want this record?" And then you buy it, right? Now it's so much more on like the showcase aspect. And I think, what we've learned in this last year is that there's just, there's so much potential here with KMS. They just really needed a
Well, I think it's
grunt,
also it's one thing starting from scratch, but it's another thing starting with
an
Kevin
already established.
Saunderson's
Exactly.
name, and not just an established name, the godfather of electronic dance music.
Yep.
I mean, no matter where you go, he's in the textbooks, page one. How did it all started? Detroit TekNoNo, Chicago's house,
Yep. Kevin Saunderson, Juan
and
Atkins, Derek May,
the
the
Belleville
founders.
Three.
Yep.
Um,
And
it's incredible.
it
It's
is. And
incredible.
it's,
And the thing about it too, and I'm just, I'll let you finish. I sound like Kanye. I'll let you finish. Me watching from the sidelines, we can tie into the draft because, draft was more, I get to witness it one-on-one where you were a year before to where you are now. I mean, the amount of networking and exponentially what you've been doing to a label is just extremely, I don't know, special and cool to just witness. So, but anyway,
I mean,
you wanted to add.
to tie it back into that, like we had the privilege to be with Kevin because he got picked to provide entertainment in the Rocket Mortgage House for the NFL draft experience in Detroit, which they broke not one record but two records. The first day they had over 275,000 people, and that is of scanned people that walked in. I definitely saw a bunch of people walking in that did not get scanned. So I would definitely say that it was probably closer to 300,000. But, we got the privilege to be Kevin's right-hand man or men as a part of that experience. And, it just, at the end of the day, like the business acumen piece that I learned from Target definitely came out in the communicational aspect with, David and even his guy Malik, because they were kind of like third party contracted to host this experience. And, we got there.
Hospitality for Kevin.
Yep. And,
Yeah.
Like there were some things that were kind of all over the place. And I just kind of went in there and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to handle things for KMS. Like, what do you need from us? Like, communicate with me. I got this." And then, to just kind of see the receptiveness of that, especially in a time that was a day after I left Target, it was like a reinforcement understanding, okay, I'm exactly where I need to be. This may be scary, but like how do you forge a block of iron into a sword? You put it in fire, you melt the fuck out of it, and then you take it out, stick it in water, and you beat the shit out of it. So you don't really get sharper and wiser unless you're under pressure. And I think it was like in that moment I realized I'm exactly where I need to be. And I think, I thank endlessly Kevin and Dantes and Damari for entrusting me, at the beginning with as little as I had, and allowing me to just kind of take the reins and to do what I do best, and that's just execute on what we need to execute on. Because I learned so much along the way, but not only did I learn things, I learned a different level of confidence in myself, because um it was a lot, and like a lot of,
But you're already a confident guy too.
I yeah, and I think like up until KMS, I think the confidence was more an insecurity. It was like a projection of insecurity, because a lot of times when you see people that are overly confident, I think it's like it's indicative that they may not be as confident as they think. They're overly confident to portray themselves to be that person that knows what the fuck is going on, but really in reality they don't. And I think along the way, the experiences that I've gained with Kevin and with Dantes and with KMS and Damari is like that confidence is now reinforced with actual experience. And I think like if it wasn't for KMS and the experiences with KMS, I wouldn't be where I'm at leaving Target, because I wouldn't have my vision and my purpose in life unfolded in front of my eyes the minute I put that date on that paper. It was like, I told you about the experience that I had when I was finishing up the track Alone. That's going to be coming out on May 10th on KMS Records. It's my remix to my Metawave brothers, their track Alone, which was also the first track that I presented to the KMS team and was able to get signed to the record label. Not only is it the first track that I presented to the team, it was from my brothers. Now, mind you, these gentlemen here, when it comes to consistency and hard work, they fucking put the work in, because that had been the 20th or 30th demo that Colin had sent me for KMS Records. And they were consistent with sending those. And there's a couple things I want to break down here. Number one, if you want to get on a specific label, be consistent. Number two, it's like, don't expect you sending me music as my friend for KMS Records that I'm going to sign it. I don't care who you are. At the end of the day, KMS is bigger than all of us. And I
just want to add something before you say anything. I know that a lot of people are now fucking hitting you up because you're a label manager and expecting certain favors.
Yeah.
Just letting you guys know, camera to camera, man to man, woman to woman, whatever, that Noah, this guy, reads through that shit like that.
Yeah.
He just knows that you're bullshitting and you're trying to get favors right away.
Yeah.
So if you're not in it for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding the process of building relationships and being grounded in yourself and who you are, he's gonna call your ass out right away.
Dude, a lot of it comes from the experience of behavioral analysis through Target and dealing with like these crackheads and heroin addicts and these literal like psychopathic mothers that are running organized crime rings, stealing formula and selling it on Facebook Marketplace. Like, I love everybody with a full heart, but the minute that somebody comes to me and thinks that because we're friends that we're going to get favors is the minute the relationship dies to me. And that's one thing I commend the Metawave boys on, is they knew that I was doing this out of respect for Kevin, because at the end of the day, KMS is bigger than all of us. KMS has been around longer than we've been alive. And I have a certain threshold of respect to uphold to, because it is KMS Records. So like the fact that you're my friend, I mean, you have sent how many demos? 7, right? And finally one latched on, and it's like,
That's true. I don't even know how many I
7. I could probably read through them right now. Praise, Jazzy. There was a couple that you sent that I don't remember the names of. Neither here nor there. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to commend the Metawave boys because they were consistent and they kept trying and they kept trying. And then guess what? They got one that stuck, and it got support from Above and Beyond. It got support from Marco Carolla.
Really? Above and Beyond?
Above and Beyond. And that
No
was like,
shit.
yeah, that was like one of the names that I was like,
Wow.
oh, damn, like none of the releases
That's cool.
up until that point got that. And like, I want to highlight that because, we've all gone through experiences sending music to labels and constantly feeling discouraged because they're saying no. I think there's a couple things, and you can speak because you have a lot more experience than I do. From like a demo submission standpoint, is like when you're sending demos to a label, one thing that you wanna do is look at what they're releasing, like, as of recent. If your sounds fall in line with those sounds, okay, like, you might have more of an opportunity to get the song, landed on that label, but, like, there have been a couple of demos that I have actually seen through tracks that come through that have been spitting images to some of the demos that have done successful on KMS. Now, there's a right way to use a reference track and a wrong way to use a reference track, and I think it's one thing to reference a specific sound that a label is doing, but it's another thing to take a reference, stick it in there, and then copy the whole thing and just change some of the elements. And like the one thing the Metawave boys did was they did something that was different, but it still fit KMS. It was emotional. It showed that real raw emotion. And I think don't get discouraged when a label tells you no. It doesn't mean that the song's not good enough. Generally speaking, it just means that it's not fit for the label, or maybe it's too similar to the tracks that they have, or maybe it's just not a good fit. Like, being told no is not necessarily a negative thing. It's just an opportunity to continue to grow your sound and grow as an artist. And I think the difference between artists that make it and artists that crumble are their ability to continue and be consistent. And that's what those boys did. So
Mhm.
from a demo submission perspective, like, provide some tips and tricks that you've used over the past. I mean, you just had that Stuck in My Mind release with one of your biggest role models, Ramen Rosati and Mr. Huxley, like, giving that an opportunity and connecting you with that. So
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about in episode 1, like, I'm really just been focusing on building relationships. I mean, I I'm no longer interested in sending cold emails anymore. I mean, it just always comes back to the people, right? We've talked about, and I think everyone goes through this process where you just want your shit to be signed by anybody. You just want your tracks to be out there on Beatport. You want to be on Spotify. You want to be credited as an artist. You are an artist. You're no longer an aspiring artist. But there's power in relationships. There's power in continuing to work for a specific label, which, mind you, I will have with Movement Comp now 3 releases, right? As RN ISMO on KMS Records.
mhm. This will be your first as just artist, but
Yeah. But it comes back to, I think, building relationships. And with Ramen and Huxley, me being in Ibiza and working for Mix Masters, it allowed me to cultivate those relationships. And, I have such utmost respect for those guys that, to me, I've always asked questions. I'm always eager, and I mean, I'm at the end of the day, like, I'm always a student of the game. So I think they've been doing it for such a long period of time, to where, when they say that they like my music and they respect it and they want to support it, it means the world to me.
mhm.
And I think with submitting demos, it really comes back to relationships. And guess what? Relationships it takes time to develop them, right? So
And money.
I'm not telling you to all of a sudden to wait constantly to wait to meet someone or meet a label. But I think that aspect of networking is very important, because you might meet someone that can open up a door to that label, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
you might do something.
Well, I mean, shit.
Amsterdam one
The
is was through your networking,
Yeah.
really, through Dantes.
Yep.
It wasn't like a cold demo per se. It
Mhm.
wasn't just like a submit an email.
It was Dantes connecting me with Reiner, and hopefully I pronounced his name right. If I didn't, we'll follow up with that. But he connected me with him, and then he was like, "Yeah, send me some demos," and I sent him some demos, and he picked one, and boom, got it signed. And I think, if it wasn't for the relationship that I built with Dantes and taking the position with KMS and building the relationship through KMS and some of the credibility that I gained through KMS, I don't know if I would have gained that. And, there is no one size fits all either. You can build those relationships with labels and get your music through the back door of labels and be very successful. And then there's other artists that only go through the track stack channels that get music signed and they're successful in that way. Like, there really isn't a right way to do it or a wrong way to do it. I will tell you though, don't send music to a label like if you're sending dubstep or trance or something to KMS, it's probably gonna get you completely booted off of sending demos to the label. But I
Have you
think
blacklisted anybody?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Well, I'm saying have you, I'm not saying who. Have you ever blacklisted anybody for the label?
I have, and it was because they were sending
Wow.
hip hop.
Wow.
And I personally messaged them through TrackStap, like, "Please don't send music that's not fit for the label," and they did it 2 more times. So I did give them 3 strikes, and then I basically
Blacklisting happens, people, so be
correct,
mindful of that.
correct. But, you know, to tie it all together, I think the draft was just a further reasoning and reinforcement in my decision making to leave Target, and I left a lot of beautiful people at Target, you know? Like, one of the main reasons that I stayed at Target as long as I did was because I knew that, you know, the people that work for me, from a promotion standpoint, like, unless I was gonna be that crazy guy that just talked up the chain of command and did what I needed to do, like, I don't know if the ball would be moving on some of the promotions in the manner that they did, and I'm not gonna take credit for that. They're amazing professionals, and they have a lot of talent, but sometimes, you know, if there isn't enough room and I'm sitting in one of the places that could potentially be filled, like, I made a sacrifice, you know, and I made a sacrifice for my team, and it's because I love my team and I lead from a personal aspect first. And I think, you know, in the corporate world, it's very easy to lose yourself in that because there's a lot of people in the corporate world that cover their own ass and that do everything for themselves and to further themselves. And no matter where I go or what industry that I'm in, I'm always going to lead from a personal aspect and I'm always going to put my team first. And I think that's what makes me a good leader. And you know, I still have a lot to learn and a lot of different things that are, you know, hurdles along the way, but the one thing that I always bring back is leading from the heart first, and you could tell the difference between a leader and a boss, because a leader is the one that's gonna be on the front lines with you, running through the front of, you know, as the infantry, and a boss is gonna be the ones in the back that are just screaming orders. I think there's a time and place to be in the back, but there's a time and a place to be in the front, and a lot of the times when you go into war, I think as a leader, it's important to lead from the front, and that's something that we always pride ourselves on is leading from the front. You know, a lot of the things that we're suggesting or telling you guys to do are things that we've already done, we're actively doing, or we're going to do. We'd never tell you to do things that we've never actually done or we haven't found success in. But I think, you know, the vision with KMS was ultimately the driving factor to get me to leave Target because I believe wholeheartedly with every fiber of my being in the future of KMS and being able to really help get the independent version of KMS off the ground using the tools and the resources that were built off of the blood, sweat, and tears of Kevin and Dantes and all of the people that came onto KMS before me. And, you know, when I'm going through demos or if I'm, you know, trying to get showcases booked, I have them in the back of my mind because I have a lot of people that, you know, built the very ground that I walk on that I feel like I owe a lot to indirectly and directly for me even having the privilege to do what I do. And I think that's why I get so heated when people try and come at me with small favors or to do this or do that because we're homies. It's like, you obviously don't get it if you're asking for those things, right? Because you don't understand the grand scheme of things. And I think to me, that's the hardest thing because it's like I've ended friendships with people that I've been friends with for a very long time because they've come at me sideways about specific things and asking for different things, but don't bring anything to the table.
I'm gonna challenge you now. I'm gonna segue a little bit. So then what is TekNoNo?
What is TekNoNo
What
as
what
and
is
what
TekNoNo? What is it? Because we had conversations, people introducing you as a promoter,
Mhm.
people introducing you as a label manager. You classify yourself as an artist, so what is TekNoNo?
I think it's an all-encompassed cooperation of all of those things. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself as being just an artist or just a promoter or just a label manager. I think it's an encompassing cooperation of all of those things as one because all of those different things and avenues and things that I've done to lead me to this point has made me who I am. And I think as an artist, if you ask me who TekNoNo is, it's somebody that communicates his emotions with house and techno and everything in between and provides an experience that's unmatched. That's one thing that I can say very confidently is like when I am playing a TekNoNo set and only a TekNoNo set, I I cultivate an experience that is different because there has never been a TekNoNo set that has been the same. Whether it's an opening set or a direct support set or a headlining set, every experience has been different, but I think part of what makes that different is having the understanding of how to properly throw shows and how to not properly throw shows as a promoter under NNP. And then the experience from a sound perspective and the maturity that I've gained from just being a part of KMS, it has made me who TekNoNo is today. And, we were just talking about it. When was the last time TekNoNo had a direct support slot?
So yeah,
Malpe,
over a year.
4/21/2023, and we finally get the privilege now. Well, I finally get the privilege now to
Well,
have a
we get the privilege now because that set was incredible. So,
yeah,
are you able to talk about like what people can expect?
yeah.
Because
I think, like, honestly, like, expect the unexpected. I think a lot of the demos that I'm gonna well, not demos, a lot of the songs that I'm gonna be playing are upcoming KMS releases that I had a part in signing or that Dantes and I found through TrackStack. I'm gonna be displaying a lot of the upcoming releases for KMS, whether that, some of the ones from the Miami comp that I haven't really played in a TekNoNo set yet, and then some of the ones coming out on the Movement comp, which, mind you, the Movement compilation is gonna be the first of its kind. Now, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I encourage it because I always like to be proper when I speak, but there hasn't really been a label that has been featured as a label that is taking over a stage during movement that has dedicated a specific compilation specifically to movement. You always hear about Miami samplers for Miami Music Week. You hear about ADE samplers for
Solid
Amsterdam.
Grooves, Ibiza Sampler is the only one I could think of.
So, and is that geared around any
Somerset. Well, I mean, because they host. I mean,
right?
I guess you can talk maybe if they were to brand it as DC-10 sampler.
Well, and I'm saying
You know,
specifically movement, like, has there been a Detroit label that has dedicated a
I don't
specific
think Detroit.
compilation?
No.
And I
Mm.
think that that's the beauty of, doing this is, uh, we're gonna be able to showcase a lot of artists that are up and coming local artists, and I don't even wanna give out the names yet because I want that surprise factor to really play a role in this is, like, the Movement compilation that's coming out has a lot of artists that, they have releases out on Spotify. Some of them are self-released, some of them could be on a label, could be a smaller label, but, you know, perfect example, Darren Devine. Darren Devine didn't have any music released up until the point of that Miami Music compilation, and his track went 97 overall on Beatport. And, like, to see that and to be able to have a part in with KMS, to give this man an opportunity to have a proper song release on a proper label, w fulfilled me in a way and inspired me in a way that just it lit my soul on fire like it never has been before, and I think, what to expect in this set. Expect a lot of sounds that you've never heard, a lot of songs that you've never heard, but expect a story to be told that encompasses the very emotion that I'm gonna be expressing, and that is, like, this very raw, emotional, but real version of TekNoNo, like, the most stripped-backed version of TekNoNo that there ever has been because I no longer have the chains that have been on my wrist for the last 8 years with Target, and I think it's gonna be something super, super special.
Are you feeding that set as a complete separate entity from your movement set, or is this kind of like
Yeah.
Endgame Part 1, Endgame Part 2 type of like two? It's like you have to really know what it's like because I mean, in the sense of like you should be there for deeper purpose and movement to understand the whole thing.
Yeah, I think, like, Magic Stick is gonna be more like I have my set tunes that I wanna play, like, very like, my 5 to 10 songs that I 100% know I wanna play, and then I'm gonna have a playlist, and I'm gonna kinda let the crowd guide me, I'm gonna play some stuff and use my crowd reading abilities to really read and to tell that story, but I think, what's gonna differentiate between that set and my movement set, like, my movement set will have some of those same songs from the Miami and the Movement compilation, but the Movement set
Mhm.
will be when I know we talked about it, it will be a little bit more geared around, you know, the
I don't know how much you want to give away.
well, I think I can give away a little bit the 4 elements that comprise the universe. You have fire, earth, water, and air. So that's what my movement set is going to essentially establish is hitting those 4 elements. When you think about earth, we think Afro house. When we think about the air, we think about, you know, horn-driven, wind elements. When we think about water, melodic techno, like Nora En Pure kind of vibes. And then when we think about fire, Bald Daddy fucking energy, baby. So that's when the more, like, intense testosterone, sex-driven music is gonna come through, and that's all I'm gonna say around the movement set, but I think it's gonna be a beautiful experience, and, you know, I do wanna to add the inspiration that came from that actually came from going and watching our brother Max do his first speech at, you know, his little, church thing that he did. I believe it was called "If You What You Didn't Know About Me" or something
It
like that.
wasn't little, but
It was not little
yeah,
at
there's a
all.
lot of
Like, we
people.
thought it was gonna
The
be
fact that
little.
we walked in there not knowing what we're gonna see, and there's hundreds of people telling their stories, which was
It was crazy, but there was a young lady that actually came on with her friend, and again, we walked into this only knowing that Max is gonna be
Max is
speaking.
gonna
That's all
speak.
we needed to know. Our brother's gonna be speaking, we're gonna be there to support. But we walked in there and, you know, at first we're like, "Are we in a church?" Yes. I don't think it was a church, but it was run by a church.
Mhm.
But then this young lady came up with her friend, and she started playing a song that really hit me in an emotional place because it was a song that I played with one of my very dear friends that I grew up with. That was one of my best friends growing up, Brandon LeClaire. It was Winds of Change by Scorpions. And it was the most beautifully imperfect performance because although, like, it is such a powerful song and it's such a unique song, like, you could tell there were imperfect moments where this young lady was, like, doing her best to play on a stage in front of 600, 700 people. And, you know, I remember, like, it was actually at a day that, I was at Target for, like, 2 hours, and I was about to have a panic attack. And I've never had a panic attack in my life. But I looked at my buddy Harley, my team lead at the time, and I was like, "Dude, I need to get the fuck out of here. I don't know what's going on. I am very intense right now, and I feel like I'm going to freak out on somebody. I don't know what to do. I need to go home." So I went home and I just broke down and started sobbing. And I put some music on because I always bring myself back to music. Music saved my life. And in those moments where I feel
Is that
like
the
my
night when you put Alpha Waves on and I came
yeah,
over?
yes, we'll get there. But I went home and I put on, like, one of my I've literally just hit shuffle in my liked songs, and I just let God kinda guide me through it, and sure as shit, Winds of Change came on. And I just, like, broke down thinking about this young girl because after that whole experience, we were walking to go say bye to Max, and I passed this young girl, and she had the guitar on her back, and I realized it was that young girl, and I went up to her, and I was like, "Hey, I just wanna let you know, like, you did a really good job today. I'm really proud of you, like, you don't know who I am. But I was really, really, like, happy with what you did. Like, it takes a lot of courage to do that." And I asked her what her name was, and she goes, "Noah." Yeah, I'll let that sit for a second. Her name was Noah, and here I am sitting here as a man named
His
Noah.
name is Noah.
And I'm like, "Holy shit." And then, of course, like, her mom, which God bless her soul, she obviously saw this big, bald, bearded man talking to her, like, 12-year-old daughter, like, "What is going on?" And then the dad came behind her, and she's like, "Hello." And I was like, "Hi, like, I'm Noah, my name's TekNoNo, like, I'm the label manager for KMS. I was just recognizing your daughter for, you know, that beautiful thing that she did on stage. You know, she played a song that was super special to me, and, you know, it was just really powerful, and I just wanted to recognize her for that." So I gave her mom my email, and then when I was having this breakdown, Winds of Change came on randomly through Shuffle on Spotify, and then I just kinda broke down, I thought about Noah, and then that's when I got this, like, urge, this just creative, just, like, explosion inside, and I just started writing. And that's when the 4 elements, started to come in and started to play out, and, you know, I sent her mom an email kind of breaking everything down. It was a very deep email, and I prefaced it with saying, like, you know, "I understand, like, if somebody was coming to me and wanted to communicate with my son or my daughter at a young age with such a deep message, like, I would always wanna send it to you guys first to get that approval first, because there's a lot of depth in this message, and I wanna make sure that you guys are okay with it." And she, you know, she read it with her husband and then eventually showed Noah, and Noah responded, and, You know, when we think about being an artist and being creative, I think, like, it was one of the realest and rawest moments of expressing myself that I ever had, and I knew in that moment, because that was also the same night that I finished Alone,
The
that
remix.
the remix, yeah, that I there was something with this art thing that was undeniable, and I knew that something had to be done. So, hopefully that answers your question with who TekNoNo is.
What about invite only? What is invite only?
To you or to me or to us?
I guess, I mean, it's to us because it involves both of us.
Um, I mean, just a couple of bald daddies that wanna shake their butts to proper music and set themselves aside from the rest. I think there's no box that you can really confine invite only to, because we're constantly striving to be different and to take sounds that are from some of our biggest inspirations, the Paw Saws, the Michael Beebe, and to really aim to curate something as powerful as Solid Grooves. It may not be invite only that we create behind that, but I think, like, eventually utilizing invite only to create something similar to Solid Grooves, where it is just when Solid Grooves is on the lineup, or you see Solid Grooves is on the lineup, the experience is gonna be proper as fuck. What is invite only to you?
I mean, it's really, it's like you said, it's very tough to define because it kind of took a life of its own because it just makes me think about the whole bald daddy thing, and it's and I had an interview with the EDM Identity, and I talked about invite only because invite only wasn't a thing where we just sat down and we're like, okay, this is what the branding's gonna be.
Mhm.
When we met, I had long hair. We're gonna put the picture up, by the way. We're gonna put the picture up.
Bert, can we get the picture up
Yeah.
here?
So, and I wasn't making minimal, and certainly you were still in the DJ No-No. You weren't actually yet. You weren't the time I met you, you're still DJ No-No. When I did that live stream, short staff live stream back on Twitch, you were still DJ No-No. So you were still not I mean, you were enjoying house, but you were still not in the position to call yourself TekNoNo at the time.
Yeah.
The first daddy reference was through Melissa. Shout out Melissa. She made us the caps that said daddy on them. And then we were already bald, so bald daddies. And I think just by naturally we were very confident in our own skin and our own ways. And I mean, we're just letting the universe dictate what happens. I think because we both have unique strengths, and we are essentially just taking it day by day, ultimately.
Yeah. I think, like,
I don't know what invite only is.
I don't either, but I think that's the privilege that we have, is being able to show in that moment what invite only is to us. And I think the one thing that invite only is that I haven't been able to experience with others, and I'm gonna try not to get emotional, is just that
No,
bond.
you should get emotional because this is the raw. This is the raw
It's the
podcast, bro.
bond that, we share, I think, is super special. I've played a lot of back-to-backs. You've played a lot of back-to-backs, maybe fewer than me, just because you are very stern with who you are as an artist, and I've been a little bit more free-flowing and taking opportunities that may not have been appropriate, but it was a learning experience along the way. And one thing that always brings me back is, when invite only's on stage, it's something different. It's my connection with you when we're on stage, we do become one, and I think that's something beautiful that we share. We don't really know where we're going or what we're doing, but we know that we're arm in arm and we're gonna take on the world together, and it's just that unwavering faith in each other to be one on that stage and to provide an experience and an escape for people that gives them an opportunity to just be one with us. And I think, when I've played back-to-backs in the past, it's always there have been some dick measuring contests. There have been, um, you
When you
know,
say it, what does that mean? Like, so if someone who's listening who doesn't know what that is,
a
what
dick
is
measuring
yeah, yeah,
contest.
yeah, in the DJ back-to-back world.
Um, it means, like, somebody trying to take the light away from you and not realize that the light's on us. You know, it's never been about that with you and I. It's never, of course, it's always like a little bit of a competition in certain aspects, but when it comes to the art that we express and the emotions that we express, it's never been about that. And it, you know, we can tie it back into Solid Grooves because I think Solid Grooves like really inspired us to follow that formula because I think for me, when Michael Beebe and Paul and Dennis Cruz go back to back, there's just a certain level of respect that is within that room and on those decks that's unmatched that I've never seen with anyone else. Because I've seen headliners pass off from headliner to headliner, and then it's like the second headliner comes in and just rip it. And it's like with you and I, it's not about that. It's more so about just being one with each other, and I think it shows in our sets. Um, you know, basically when we're playing music and shit, that we're not up there to compete with anyone but ourselves. And, you know, I think it's just an honor to be able to continue this path with you because you're also another huge inspiration and driving force in me leaving Target because I know that no matter what is to come, I always have you by my side. You're always going to be there to help support me and to push me in sometimes the most aggressive fashion, which I have to check you on at times. But I think it all comes with purpose. And the more that we learn to harness that aggression and the more that you learn to help me organize what's in my head, the further that we get as invite only and as RN ISMO and as TekNoNo.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I remember made an impact when I sent you that text about, and I wish you were there, but you
DC
understood it.
10, Michael Beebe.
Well, no, it was Space. It was
Ah,
Pasa, yeah, Michael Beebe, Dennis Cruz, and it was just this thing where, we talked about letting, if BB's on, BB's on. It's the spotlight's on him and what he's doing. And it just became this thing where it's like, okay, BB's on and he's murdering. He's absolutely murdering. And then you're just kind of like, fuck. And then Cruz hops in and you're like, oh, fuck. Like,
how's he gonna
how is he
respond?
going to respond? And then Dennis Cruz starts to do his, like a tribal, fast 132 Afro house type of thing. You're like, oh, fuck. Like, you love it. And then all of a
And then
sudden,
here's this
Bossa,
7'9" giant of a
and then
human.
everything just gets stripped back. But it's like, each track is commendable 5, 6, 7 minutes. They let each other play those tracks out. And that's what, in a way, what's difficult about back to backs is that, like you said, I mean, the aspect of us is that we allow that expression to an extent of course, if we have longer sets, we're fully able to do that. If we have like an hour, of course, it's going to be a little bit more limited. But there's, when I described what I saw at Space, it was just this thing where all of those three artists, Pasa, Dennis Cruz, Michael Beebe, I
Who all
was
stand very strong
on their own.
singularly.
Yeah, but it was like this fact that, okay, like, how is the next person that's going to play a track going to respond? And every time it's like, oh man, like Pasta will play something crazy, and then you're like, okay, after that it's BB, and BB starts to pick things up again, and then it's like there's moments where I'm like, fuck, I even forget Dennis Cruz is still there, you know?
Well, yeah, because he's like half the
Yeah, but
size.
then it's like, fuck, Dennis Cruz is on right now, and you're like, you get excited for that, and I think we allow each other to have the moment of it's like, okay, TekNoNo's on, okay, RN ISMO's on, and together this is invite only. And I think we do have a bit more of a succinct thing where I actually didn't tell you this, like they fully, actually no, I did tell you this, where it's like, okay, when BB's on, he's on fully, you ain't touching his
Yeah,
knobs.
what did you say to me? Do you trust me?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, "Do you trust me?" It's like, "I'm transitioning. Don't touch anything." But I think we have a bit of more of a relationship now to where it's like, I can see what you're about to do. I'm like, "Okay, do it, do it." Like, loop this section. Okay, cool, that's fine. And then it's like, okay, the effects or whatever. So we have a little bit more of a free flow in the sense of like I can jump in when it's your track and kind of do
Yeah,
something. Um,
and it's all the open communication too because,
yeah,
like, there have been
but
sets
it's never
too.
been like perfect either. We had some moments,
Yeah, and I think
oh, didn't expect that.
what invite only is cultivating into is just trying to allow each other the space to be represented singularly, but also plurally at the same time. Because I think that's what makes us stronger as a unit,
Mhm.
is because we allow each other the ability to be singularly expressed in that moment, but as a unit. And I think, like, that is why we've been able to do the things that we've been able to do and had the privilege to play some of the shows that we've had and been trusted by some of these venues to, "Hey, we're announcing you as support on a Monday and the show's on Friday, fill the fucking venue." And guess what we do? Why? Because we know who we are, we know what the story is that we wanna present, and we know how we're going to present it,
Mhm.
which I think is important, and I think that's where a lot of, like, the locals lose, like,
Well, they get
some
overly
aspect.
emotional, right? We always think about like, okay, we think logically about each event. So, we get booked, for example, I mean, we can bring it up. I mean, Joshua for Big Pink, it's me coming back for my Ibiza, what's the market? Like, we're marketing me coming back. This is an invite only. Like, oh, how does that gonna play out? The boys haven't seen each other in over 2 months. Um, and then really allowing that to express itself, but it just never feels like, yeah, like we're really like trying to outcompete and outshine one another.
Mm-mm.
It's just, I mean, I've always pride myself to letting the music speak for itself
Yeah.
because I know that the amount that I crate dig is there's not that many people that crate dig the amount that I do. So like when I play my music, I don't need any crazy showmanship. I will have a lot of fun, but I don't need to, just go crazy with it. Like I just know that you've never heard this before ever.
Yeah.
Like I've really dug deep into the aspects of crate digging that I think just it's minimal and there's like minimal of minimal. It's like, what is that?
Mhm.
And then I have to figure out a way for the Detroit crowd to hear that for the first time.
Well, and I think another thing too that sets in, like, when you ask what is invite only, what sets invite only aside, is it's not even the set. It's not the preparation. It's not the promotional aspect or selling the actual show itself. It's the conversations that happen afterwards. The conversations that happen at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're recapping the
Literally
show.
after the show, we
Yeah, literally,
can't go to sleep
until we
because
recap.
we have to recap. We have to
Yeah,
talk about
when
it.
it's fresh in the mind, and I think,
Like, we
like,
fucked up here. This should have
yeah,
been
and it's
better.
like it's us focusing, and I was having a conversation with Damari too about, our back-to-back that I just did with the Saunderson brothers, and I realized in that moment, like, a lot of the stuff that I'm analyzing or overanalyzing or hyper fixated on are, like, things that normal people don't listen to, or that, not Damari. Like, Damari heard the things that I was critiquing on myself, and Dantes heard the things I was critiquing on myself, but, like, most artists aren't having those conversations after the fucking show. They're just, like, in the moment, going to the afters, getting fucked up, and getting after it. And, like, we're like, "Okay, business is done, let's recap," because the show's not done until the recap happens. And I always love those recaps because those recaps, like, whether our set was 95% great, we're focused on the 5% that's gonna make us that much better. And I think, like, every show that we do, we get a little bit better, we get a little bit more connected with each other in our craft. And, it's just super exciting for all the beautiful things that we have in store coming up. We got Deeper Purpose this coming weekend. I'm gonna be direct support for Deeper Purpose at Magic Stick with our buddy Govan Jones and Michael Negradamus. It's both of their first Paxa House shows. It's Michael's first time on the main stage at Magic Stick. It's Govan's first time at the main stage at Magic Stick, I believe. And it's going to be a super great event. We're giving away 2 movement tickets. All you got to do, snag your ticket. And we're going to be giving away 2 movement tickets during my set to 2 lucky fans. Shout out to Cece. She won the last one. at the Groove Gala. It was actually a friend of Dropcatch's who wasn't actually gonna go to Movement because she didn't have the funds to be able to do that.
Nice.
So
See,
to be able to
she took a chance on
she
that.
took a chance on it and she came and she had a good time and she won that ticket. So, I'm hoping those tickets find some good homes for some
Which,
people.
mind you, people like think about like it's not like thousands of people are signing up for this. It's like there's only like handful of people that sign up that just follow the instructions.
Yeah.
So like the chances of you winning is quite high.
I think, yeah, what's the capacity of Magic Stick? Like 900, I think? Well, that's with the alley deck open. I
Okay.
don't know if the alley like, there's no one on the alley deck. I
Mhm.
think maybe 800. So there's 800 spots in this giveaway, and you have the opportunity to do that. All you gotta do is buy a ticket. And then we're gonna announce the 2 winners during my set. So we got Deeper Purpose coming up on the 4th. Maybe some things sprinkled in between from that point into Movement, but then we got TekNoNo debut at Movement. To think that my first set at Movement is gonna be at the fucking pyramid stage is
Yep.
insane.
That's awesome.
We were just there during the NFL draft, and you and Lou went and broke off on a side quest and went and stood over there for a little bit, and then the next day you were like, "We need to go to the pyramid stage so you can visualize right
Yep.
now." And I'm like,
Yep.
"Okay." And we met those 2 dudes that were sitting back there or whatever. Um, but, like, just being there and seeing, like, just these food trucks sitting there and, like, visualizing the pyramid stage and what it was last year when when Ricardo Villalobos was just absolutely ripping it, which, mind you, I was talking to Michael, the guy that shot Kevin, and he was talking about Ricardo Villalobos and how there was, like, 30 fucking people on stage and how he, like, couldn't get up there to take photos or something, and I'm just thinking in my head, like, what is it gonna look like for the KMS
I
stage?
just remember Ooze saying that Villalobos couldn't find his headphones, for the first like 15 minutes. I was like, yeah, this track is pretty long. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, he always has long tracks, but like it's pretty long.
Yeah.
Nothing really happens,
And so we got the KMS, showcase.
which is also a big deal for Lou and the overall Tribe crew because they're gonna be shooting the entire day
Mhm.
for KMS stage, and they will feed into Magic Stick, which is where we're gonna be back for invite only takeover at the alley deck, and we're planning on doing a bunch of different surprises for the people that show up for that.
Yeah,
So it's a movement weekend, so you never know who's gonna be there at
yeah,
the
and I
alley
mean, so
deck.
we got for the lineup for the KMS stage, this is on Sunday of Movement Sunday, May 26th. I'm gonna be starting it off. You got TekNoNo.
Two
Um,
o'clock,
yep.
bright and
Which
early.
I don't know if the full lineups are announced in terms of set times, so I will not reveal that. I will go A to Z. We got Coco and Breezy, 2 absolute powerhouse queens, that will be playing the stage. We have Sama Abdul Hadi. We got the Saunderson brothers, my brothers in Christ. And then we got Will Clark. And then to end it all, we have the special Kevin Saunderson back to back with Idris Elba. I know that when I told my mom I was playing Movement and she actually saw the announcement of Kevin Saunderson back to back with Idris Elba, she fangirled out for a second, and both my aunts fangirled out for a second, and they got all excited. So it's going to be very unique to see how that all plays out because that got a lot of people excited that have no idea what house music really is. Not that my mom doesn't, but like it's just she knows house music because I know house music. So it's
Right.
going to be really cool to see how that stage, comes along, and how the story is told start to finish. And then we got the after party afterwards at Magic Stick, which obviously is a very unique lineup, which we've already been talked to a couple of times. We got Kevin Saunderson with the techno set on the inside, and to set him up, Mr. Justin Martin, and then Coco and
Detroit
Breezy
loves Justin Martin though, so I know
every time.
he's gonna set him up properly.
And
I
I'm
don't think
excited
there's
to
gonna
see how
be
the cadence of the night on the inside goes because, when we first started talking about that show, it was just like with Justin Martin and Kevin Saunderson on the same lineup. Like that's a selling point in and of itself. But
correct.
they know what they're doing and they're professionals and it's gonna be a beautiful, beautiful experience. We got the Saunderson brothers and invite only outside. May have a couple of special guests along the way during that
Mhm.
time. So we look forward to seeing all your beautiful faces
Unannounced.
there. What other things do you have to share before we kind of wrap this up here, guy?
Well, I kind of wanted to do some
Oh
more
yeah, you got
questions,
questions.
so I kind of fired the questions before the podcast. I mean, for me, the RN ISMO project is it's unique in of its own way because yes, it's awesome to be, leading the front for the middle attack in Detroit and it's all awesome to have that staple, but it's also I'm in a position that's quite niche, and with that niche, I recognize, and you and Aoi back in Denver challenged me to, like, I gotta do more grunt work and bringing more minimal artists in. Like, I am genuinely disappointed that movement doesn't have minimal artists
Mhm.
at any capacity, and there's no after parties outside of what actually, well, Rusin is gonna host a few, but there isn't anything that's formidable, right? So I want to push minimal tech in Detroit because minimal tech in Detroit, I know will work. It's just the people have not seen it at the capacity where they understand it.
Mhm.
But
And I wanna point out how quickly you moved on that because we had that conversation with Aoi 1. Like, 4 t
Saturday.
yeah,
Oh no, it
so
was, yeah, like last, yeah, was it Saturday? When the
yeah,
hell did we play Sunday?
4/27 because the show was on the 26th, I wanna or no, it was on the 20th, so it was, like, 4/21 that we had this conversation at his house, right? And by 4/23, I had emails in my fucking inbox of you connecting minimal artists to get them here even
Yeah,
before movement, and at the end of the day, like, the sense of urgency that came with that, that is what separates and gets us a lot of those opportunities is we're quick. We move quick on our feet. We see an opportunity, we take it and we run with it, right? And Rome wasn't built in a day, but it also wasn't built without a fucking vision. So like if you want to do something, like if you want to do something and bring more minimal artists here, no one's going to fucking do it for you. Yeah,
no
you can
one's
have
gonna do it.
help for
Yeah,
the venues and stuff like that, but ultimately you're the one that has the ideas, you have the relationship with a
yeah,
lot of these artists and you're the driving force that's going to bring that. So like if you want something, go out and get it and I commend you for doing that because you had that conversation with them on Sunday and literally Monday, Tuesday we already had emails from multiple agents and different artists that had some availability leading up to movement and this shit isn't going to be built by itself. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
And I
like
and I and I, that's why I really am grateful every day to have you, brother, because you're also helping me to solidify those shows,
yeah,
and kind of I can push it in my direction, but you're also providing something which with what you've learned with hosting shows and KMS to make
yeah.
sure that it's properly done.
Yeah. I mean,
And I
we
mean, I
understand.
recognize that too, because sometimes it's easy to be taken advantage of. If I don't know, and this is not a recommendation by any means. I'm not telling you guys all of a sudden to go ahead and hit up agents. Okay, this
Do
is
not hit
not.
up
Do
agents if you
not
don't have a
hit up
venue and a date.
agents if you have no idea what the hell's going on, because there is the politics that are involved.
Mhm.
Um,
What talent buyer in the city has brought them beforehand? You
Exactly, and
don't
those
like,
relationships have
especially when you
already been
have
established
yeah,
previously, and it's not even about the artists, it's also the overall agencies that
yeah,
are, let's say have these people on
relationships.
in the roster, right? So it's like, hey, Kara works for this agency and she has a list of 30 minimal artists. You or me hitting them up individually, they're gonna be like, what is this guy doing? Like some
Yeah.
rando in Detroit trying to book these artists when I'm like, I'm working directly through all of these clubs already. So it makes me look bad and makes Detroit look bad because
Yeah.
now you're overstepping, you're overreaching.
Which Detroit's unique because we have the entity of Paxahau that has run things for such a long time. It's you contact agents, you have conversations with agents all the time, and like it's very crazy because like a lot of like the names that we would target as some of the bigger minimal names, they're like, okay, is Chuck involved? Is
Yep.
Paxahau involved? And that is something that like some of these local artists that are like, let's bring Eli Brown to town. And it's like, okay, well, what the fuck does that mean? Like, who's involved? Like, who have they worked with
Yeah,
in
and
the
and I and
past
I
and
and I
stuff?
and I recognize that too because you talk about bringing biggest names in the world for minimal tech, that's going to take some time.
It
And
is.
Detroit is not the hottest market. Detroit's never been exposed to that, so there is a bit of that. Number one, they want to play New York, Chicago, L.A. That's their hot markets. Detroit's going to be a secondary market to them.
Yeah.
They have to have a good offer. And with that, also the club owners that are unaware of these artists, it is my responsibility to tell them like this will work. Trust me.
Yeah, but then
Trust me.
then to add to it's not even just the trust, it's that trust comes with knowing that when RN ISMO or NNP or TekNoNo's on a show, that it doesn't necessarily matter who the fuck the headliner is, the show is going to be proper. And it took years of us doing what we're doing, and even, me at the earlier stages doing it on my own to really gain that trust of a lot of these venues where it's like, "Yo, this guy wants this much money and has these releases and stuff, but do DJs, people outside of DJs know him?" No? Well, then what are you gonna do to ensure the show is successful? And I think having that mindset really gets us those opportunities because even with the Joshua show, like we had 4 days to promote that and
Correct.
we still had a successful show, and he just came from a show at EDC and he was like, "Dude, this was so much more fun than
Oh, that's right. I
EDC."
forgot. He loved
He
Detroit.
loved
He
it. Him and his
loved it.
wife or girlfriend, fiance, I don't know, what a saint, like, they had
They
the
were awesome.
time, and I think
And it's also understanding, like, and I do want to get to these questions, but it's understanding the overall, like, hey, if this doesn't make sense at this moment, I have to pass. I have to pass.
yeah.
And I'm not gonna try to force a show that isn't meant for the city because it's just gonna people gonna lose money. They're gonna have a sour taste. The club owners, the town bars, are gonna have a sour taste.
Yep.
A few people might have fun with the show and they're gonna be happy, but
Ultimately, it
that's the
boils down to,
challenge.
did the show fucking make money? There's always
Yeah,
shows that you
or break, at
may
least break
break
even.
even, like, we're aiming to make money for sure, and if the show isn't gonna make money or break even with a purpose, then we're probably not going to take it in that moment. So, as we wrap this up, we'll get to a few questions. I know I have a couple, but I just have 2, so I'll just
Oh,
knock these out.
you had those too.
Yeah, well, I put it up on my story too with a different
Oh,
one.
that's right.
So,
Okay,
first
go ahead.
question came from Mr. Slimy, Mr. Slimebration. What tools, plugins would you recommend to somebody new to producing? I'll give my first take. I think I'm not going to really recommend any that are going to cost you any money. I think number one, Voxengo Span.
I was about to say span.
Yeah, Span. It
It's
it is
visual analyzer.
visual analyzer that allows you to, in high resolution, analyze the frequencies on a very dialed in perspective. And that, above all things, is super important for the beginning producers because if you don't understand where specific elements are sitting within the frequency charts, then you're not necessarily going to have a mix down or a song that sounds proper. So I would say get Voxengo Span because it allows you to really dial in on those frequencies, understand where hats sit, where vocals sit, where bass sits, where kick sits, where things shouldn't be sitting. And then it gives you a deeper understanding of how all the elements come together to create a properly mixed track. What do you got?
Well, I mean, span number one. I just, I think just commit to like either a serum diva, like just one of those like VSTs that you
Yeah.
can like a synth VST that you can also make, basses with. Um,
But don't get lost in the idea of having to create
but
a
I'm
bunch of
saying just
sounds.
just one, just one,
Yeah.
just
Get
one,
the presets
and
though.
then with the presets, of course.
Like
Um,
I spent a year producing music with Serum trying to figure out how to create bass sounds that were authentic. Hey, we don't really need to create bass sounds yet because we really don't even know what the fuck make those sounds up. Let's just use the presets and maybe just try and figure out ways to use those presets and to create the music until we understand all the elements that come together and all the knobs that come together to make that sound.
and I would say, yeah, and do, it's not even about plugins, just do a shit ton of sample searching. Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
packs, get a shit ton of samples. Um, which I remember like when you got started, like I was like, yeah, you just really low on samples, because you can get your juices flowing very quickly. You got a good kick,
Yep.
you got a good clap, boom, a hat, okay, kind of got a groove going. So certainly I think just searching for samples, and I mean, I'm talking about magnitude of folders
Yeah.
and understanding what those samples are, I think will be important. Samples from Mars, I highly recommend.
Nice.
Um,
What question you got?
this is from Max Dashevsky, which Max, I
Shout
missed
out to
you,
Mr. Max. We
and
love you,
I
King.
cannot wait to see you. Great question. Do you ever have creative differences over tracks?
Oh, I don't think tracks. I don't think there's been a point where we have creative differences with tracks. Now with sets, yes, we have had creative differences. And I'll point out the time that played the 3-minute song and you freaked the fuck out mid set. Like, you gonna give me fucking 3-minute track? What the fuck? In the moment on stage,
Yeah.
that was definitely a creative difference. And
And I would say recently too, and I would the recently was also I think because I haven't had an RN ISMO show, and I just like I have a lot of music that I made, and I really want to showcase this. So where sometimes because I am towards the minimal side, um,
Are you talking the Ranger set?
arranger. I mean,
But
I
I think
think
that's a beautiful thing to point out because although it was a creative difference, it was one of those moments where took a step back and respected each other. And I knew in
yeah.
that moment, you haven't had an Aranismo set in a while. And I knew when I heard those sounds coming through that it was going to be a very special moment for you. And then that's when I kind of stepped back and allowed those
And
moments
I
to really
appreciate that
unfold.
because it's one of those things. It's like you make these tracks, and you know, like I know that it's gonna work, and
Yeah,
you're like, okay, I'm gonna play it.
1000%. And I recognized in that moment that we needed to let those tracks speak. And like we ended the set with Alone,
Yep.
and you stepped back to the point where you were almost off stage
Well,
watching
symbolizing you being alone.
you being alone, and
Yep.
that was magical. So, like, our creative differences are always tied back into an understanding of what we're trying to portray in that
And
moment.
I think with from a production perspective, it might be something where, if I disagree with you, I will explain why.
Mhm.
And I don't think you ever gave me a particular like, I really disagree with you here. It's always
No, because a
been
lot of time with production, because it's such a strong suit for you, normally when you pose it, hey, this shouldn't be this way, and you give that explanation and you explain the whys, I typically have an easier time understanding why that is an appropriate decision that you're influencing, right? And I think it's it ties back into me understanding what your strengths are, me understanding what my strengths are, and us becoming one as invite only that really makes everything work because we have the ability to have those real raw conversations and to really challenge each other on such a fucking extreme level, but we do it in such a respectful way that like we're not leaving that table until we both find common ground.
sometimes when you get heated
I mean,
though.
no, there is always heat in that fucking kitchen for sure.
What's your
But
other question?
one more question that I have from Mr. Randolph William. He said, any non-EDM house techno artist styles that inspired my music? Mine, David Bowie, huge inspiration. Prince, another huge inspiration. I think with David Bowie, I mean, if you revert back to my first release ever on Blair Music Group, shout out to Mr. Colin Wolf Daddy for giving this one a shot. Not a lot of people know this, but the main vocal tagline in that track is actually a BBC radio interview with David Bowie about being an artist that I snipped. And, I think a lot of my inspiration for music in the non-EDM world came from the love of music with my father, which we talked about a little bit in the first episode. I grew up listening to some of the most proper music known to man that will always stand the test of time. And that's, the David Bowies, the Who, the Genesis, Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, Sting. I could go on and on and on. And if I didn't have that upbringing with proper music, I don't think that I'd be influenced to respect music to the degree that I do now. Because a lot of the music that's coming out nowadays, it doesn't have a shelf life because it doesn't have something that really sets it aside. It's something for the billboards and then it leaves. It doesn't. And I had a conversation with Paul from Ghetto Blaster about this too. It's like making music to hit the charts and making music to stay on the shelf forever, there will always be a difference because a lot of the songs that were number one last year aren't being played now. But the songs that
Mm.
will always remain are the ones that stay on the shelves, and those are the ones that are unique and
Sometimes you
authentic.
can't really say that because if
Well,
the track
no,
was released last year,
correct.
we gotta wait until 2030 to really know.
Of course. But what I mean, do you have any not EDM house techno artist styles that inspired your music?
I'm gonna kind of twist. I will say no because I've always been listening to dance music all the fucking time, all
Mhm.
the time. However, I would say from just an art perspective, boombox recently, boombox recently, but from a perspective of art and just turning my brain off and exploring what that art is, WWE wrestling,
Wow.
because that is art and encompassing. Because if you think about it, like, yes, it's scripted, but they are presenting that persona and then it resonates with people to a degree like, okay, now you will be a main eventer.
Yeah.
now you will go against The Rock.
Yeah.
Like, what was The Rock?
Yeah.
And you know, you have someone, we can talk about The Rock being what The Rock is now, but it's also like when The Rock started, The Rock wasn't the final boss of what we know now. And I mean, some of you guys don't know wrestling, but it's that growth from him being
Having $7 in his fucking pocket, leaving NCAA
right, right,
football.
right. And it's like, okay, so now you're in wrestling, here's your persona, and then you have to adapt because at the end of the day, when we go and DJ, what is invite only? I don't know, but we are creating this art and we're expressing ourselves and we're trusting what's gonna happen next. Same thing goes with like, you know, John Cena. Because when he started, he was like the doctor of thugonomics. He's like was rapping. He was like the heel.
Yeah,
He was
yeah, yeah,
rapping
yeah.
when he won the United States Championship. But then it kind of personified into this guy that became just this. I mean, he was like the Marine, and then he became the face of WWE. Even currently, like Cody Rhodes. I mean, Cody Rhodes was the dashing Cody Rhodes and the son of Dusty Rhodes, and then he became the Gold Dust, and that didn't work out. The guy left WWE, started AEW, which is a competing company, and became successful, brought back to the WWE
You're speaking a different language to
and
me right now.
became the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. But what I'm saying is I'm watching this and I'm like watching it as the story unfolding in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like when I look at the overall how does this affect me? Well, it affects my art.
Yeah.
How do I
Because
want
it's
to
how
tell
you
my
tell the
story?
story.
How do I tell
Exactly.
my story?
Exactly.
How do I encompass if you don't know me, right? And it's like, you know, ultimately in a lot of I mean, wrestling in itself, WrestleMania is like, okay, we're ending this chapter in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
But there's how do I gather your attention so you can follow along to get to that end of the story from the chapter 1 to the end? And that might take multiple years. So for me as an RN ISMO, in a lot of ways, it comes back to each track and certain releases. It's my responsibility to tie in those storylines. And I think recently, you know, especially with Will You, Confiance, Stuck in My Mind, the way those were released, I didn't plan, but there's a lot of narration that happened to a
Oh, yeah.
degree that
We'll have
was
to table
more
that for a later date. Maybe we can do like a full episode breaking down the full on purpose and storyline behind all of our tracks
all
that
of
we've
those tracks.
released thus far
Yeah,
because it creates such a different perspective when you listen to the music, when you hear the storyline that was behind
and I
those
think this
songs.
people get attached to it as well because it's like people have when we make music, we have a different understanding of what that music is, and then someone listens to it, they will have a whole another idea of what that is,
Yeah.
and that they will have maybe completely different connection to that track. But then if there's a story, now there's a whole another element that they might be like, wow, I
Hmm.
didn't expect this. Like Stuck in My Mind, right? You can think of it like, okay, it's a release, but it's also released with two of my biggest inspirations and mentors, Huxley and Rahman, developing those relationships, right? Me making that track in 2021 and just now being released.
Hmm.
So that is a story of its own,
Yeah.
you know? Um, but again, coming back to the question, WWE inspires me in a very articulate artistic expression, to which it's definitely more outside of the dance music. But all of what I listen to, I mean, it's nonstop dance music,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
pretty much, and mostly minimal
Yeah.
to nowadays.
Well, we'll wrap it up here with some reminders. We got Deeper Purpose this Saturday on 5/4 Magic Stick, Deeper Purpose, TekNoNo, Govan Jones, Michael Negrodamus. And then we got our movement. I'll be playing movement on Sunday, the 26th, followed up by a proper after party with Kevin Saunderson, Justin Martin, Coco and Breezy, the Saunderson brothers, and invite only at Magic Stick as well. We look forward to seeing you guys. Make sure you keep sending us your questions because we always want to make sure that we're providing content and different wisdom and knowledge for you guys that is ultimately going to be applicable to your lives and to your journeys. But just thank you for taking the time for sitting with us as we sporadically move through these different things that we want to talk about. And we look forward to seeing you all again. I am TekNoNo.
1 second, just one more thing, because maybe people were waiting for this. I'll just do 2 minutes. The Denver story with the strong, Will You, right? We went to the gym.
Oh,
We
shit.
went to the gym, 2
We went to
minutes.
the gym.
We went to
Okay.
the gym. First gym was closed.
Yes.
I was looking for the gyms because I was like, dude, I can't sit here any longer.
Mhm.
I need to go work out. First gym was closed. I found the second gym, and then the
Rocky Mountain Flex Fitness. We
Rocky Mountain
walk in
Flex.
there, we meet this lovely young
Bethany.
lady, Bethany, and I gave her a QR code sticker that goes straight to my link tree. Gave it to her, and I'm sitting there hitting bench press. Ish is hitting the squats,
I had
and
no headphones, by the way. You had headphones.
I had
I
headphones.
forgot my
Ish
headphones.
forgot his headphones at
Because
home,
usually we're just locked in.
and Ish comes out of left field. Now, mind you, there's one thing I don't like is when people come up behind me without announcing themselves. It's the quickest way to get your shit knocked in. Don't ever do that. There's multiple people that have done this in the scene, and I've warned them, if it happens again, you're getting smacked. But he came up from behind me, and luckily I was able to see his shadow in the peripherals and then in the reflection of the window. And I turned my head, and he's like, dude. And I'm like, what? And he goes, listen, I took my AirPods out. Will You is playing inside of the gym at this fucking random Denver gym, Rocky Mountain Flex Fitness. And we both
Yep.
were like, what the hell? And so Ish didn't know it at the time, but he didn't know I gave her that QR code. So he had no idea that she had access to who we were or what we did. But it was such a profound, special moment. So shout out to Bethany for doing that. And I just happened to see
Meant
Chris
so much to
like
us, man.
walk behind the desk when we were finally walking into the gym. So I knew Chris had some way capacity, like some authority around there. So I saw him actually walking by me, and I just reached out my hand and I thanked him for allowing us to, come to his gym and whatnot. And, fast forward to the next day, Chris, his lovely wife, and a wonderful
It's
group
Amber.
of
I think it's
people. Yeah,
Amber.
Amber. I was trying to think of her Instagram name, and I knew it was
Yeah,
Amber
Amber and
something.
Chris. And then they came out to our show at Bow's.
They did,
And
and
then
they
they
brought
hung out
like 7
prior.
people, and they came to our place beforehand.
Such incredible
Just
people.
the most beautiful, down-to-earth people, and it was like, that is just another reason that I felt like I'm finally at home with who I am as a person.
And that's what it's all about, like building those relationships.
Yeah.
That just like it just happened, right?
did.
I can't explain how
It's just
it happened.
It's
it happened.
it's God putting people in your life at the right time and in the right place. And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amber, for the hospitality. Thank you, Aoi and Parmesan and Cofactor and all the boys.
Devin, what a
Devin for
beautiful
sure.
soul.
And
Trey, Cofactor,
and I think her name is Sadie. She shot us as well.
Sadie.
Hopefully it's Sadie. I
Hopefully
know
it
it's something
is.
with an S, but the whole Bao family, thank you for the hospitality. You guys got a magical thing going there at Bao. Keep it going. And we will talk to you guys all very soon. It is a good day to get lost in the groove with your Bald Daddies. We will see you another time.
Love you guys. That's a wrap. What a
Invite
beautiful
only
storytelling
experience.
there in the end, right? We kind of kept it as a cliffhanger. We brought it
We'll
back.
always ADHD the fuck out this podcast. And shout out to Menace Media for always taking care
Yes,
of us.
thank
We're here
you.
at the St. Regis Hotel. They're always keeping us glued, keeping all the equipment in check. We're going to get this fucking light that's on a timer in check for our next episode.
Yep,
because
and
it
random
definitely
people
went down
walking
a couple
through.
of times. But we wouldn't be here without the Menace Media boys. So shout out to Bert and Agron and Mr. Mark Miller and all the Menace Media boys. They are such a huge part in us being able to provide this experience. So we look forward to the next
Love
invite
you
only
guys.
experience.
Thank you. God bless. Take care.